Joined UNA UK in April 2011. As UNA's head of campaigns, Ben coordinates the charity's Together First campaign to give civil society a greater voice in global decision-making. He also leads the organisation's policy work on arms control and disarmament, with particular focus on international processes and UK advocacy to improve nuclear security, ban lethal autonomous weapon systems, and regulate arms exports. Ben, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be here. I was invited to speak for about 5 minutes about sort of the links between climate change and war, and also to think about what the UN's angle is on this issue. So for a start, one of the really important things the UN has done has brought together climates in order to evidence what we've heard about before, and what that sign over there that says war and 2 arrows either way and then climate change. The fact that there's a vicious cycle and that war causes climate change in turn makes war more likely, increases the risk and increases the length of war, and increases the humanitarian fallout, which in turn causes more war and then more climate change. You can see how the cycle goes on. There's a couple of dynamics that I want to quickly pull out of this cycle. The first of all is that the impact of this cycle is uneven. It's interesting to note that 90% of the refugees globally come from countries which are disproportionately affected by climate change. And that a lot of those refugees are fleeing conflict. I also want to talk about, as we've got nurses, not nukes up here, and we've talked a lot about sort of the opportunity cost of our militarism, but there's a very specific opportunity cost that I want to talk about, and that's the cost on international cooperation. When war and when Ukraine has happened, that Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine has happened at the UN, basically other conversations stop. There's this spillover that causes and inhibits action on other things. So to put it simply, whilst we have Ukraine happening, we don't have states negotiating a Green New Deal. So that's just one particular opportunity. There's a lot of other opportunity costs, but that's a particular one I wanted to sort of bring out. And driving all this, we've heard about this already. There's this global arms race that we're now in. We're now in a situation where in the last 10 years, global military spending has doubled to well over 2 trillion. That's 2,000 billion per year. Incidentally, that's the amount of money it would take to fund the United Nations, which is ostensibly a peace organization, 666 times over. So that's the sort of ratios that we're up against and that the UN is up against here. So what can we do about it? It's clear we need to break this cycle. We've seen what happens with global arms races. You know, we've had 2 world wars. We should have learned from them. There's 2 specific things I think we can do here in the UK to sort of focus on this issue that I want to pull out. I was recently clearing out my old school books, and I came across my history book from when I was 13 years old, a state school in Essex. And we did a whole study on how Britain's empire, and I quote, civilized the world. No mention of slavery. No mention of exploitation, just a pretty glorified study of how we exported sort of a positive culture and how, frankly, everyone else was jealous of us for doing this. Now, the syllabus may have improved a little bit since then, but this is still the version of British history, and this reaffirmation of our superiority and this entitlement that the ruling class ingested, and this is what they learned from. And if you're going to a school, if you're going to Winchester College, if you're going to Eton with your busts of Winston Churchill, you're going to be getting this on steroids. So it's just worth parking that, because I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. By the time students hit university, it gets much worse. Demilitarized education has done some incredible work. Investigative journalists have done the same in order to uncover these links between universities and the arms sector. We've got Rolls-Royce, we've got BAE Systems, we've got them deeply embedded to our universities. I think this partnership's worth over $1 billion, which have been revealed as a result of this investigative work. And then we have the MOD and their direct funding of public money into universities, which I mean, it doesn't take me to tell, I think we can all agree that there's just no place for arms companies, for military spending on our campuses and universities. That's something that's got to be addressed. And the next thing I want to talk about is public exclusion. Public exclusion from our national security strategy, which is a document that not many people know about, but that's intentional, that's by design. The strategy is the UK's foremost plan for Britain's role in the world, and it defines the shape of our military and what our nuclear weapons posture looks like. The last major review was in 2021. It was billed by Boris Johnson as the most important, comprehensive and joined up review of defence, development and foreign policy in 3 decades. So you would have thought we'd know about it. You'd have thought we'd heard about this thing. You'd have thought, at the very least, perhaps a minister-led national conversation about this, but nope. The element of public consultation on this was actually so lame that it reminds me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And there's that document that is meant to communicate to planet Earth, the occupants of planet Earth, the plans for an interstellar bypass. And this bypass is going to destroy all the inhabitants on planet Earth. Remember that one? And the document was put in a filing cabinet in a derelict, leaky toilet behind a sign saying, "Beware the leopard." This is the level of intentional sort of evasion when it comes to the public actually getting a look in on this strategy. So the parallel is that the Cabinet Office discreetly put up a web page during the summer of 2021, and the web page had, I think, 5 questions. There was no media work. It was in the height of the pandemic. They received a paltry 450 responses, 75% less than 5 years before when they kind of did a similar exercise. The irony is that the end result, the document that came out of this consultation, repeatedly lauded the UK's public consent, the openness of our society and our democratic values, in stark contrast to the enemies, the authoritarian regimes, who don't care what their public think. So this is what the document that came out of the totally evasive consultation looked like. Less amusingly, the strategy also significantly expanded our nuclear arsenal and raised the cap on the amount of warheads we can create by 40%. It also rolled back on transparency measures and trust-building measures. No fallout in the mainstream media. No serious parliamentary debate. And we just heard from the previous speaker about this toxic masculinity. So all we had was this hyper-masculine sparring across the dispatch box with Starmer and Johnson, the two of them wanting to both seem tougher than each other. And just think about that for a minute. Like, that was the extent of the public scrutiny over a document which allows our nuclear stockpile to increase by 40%. So it's this patriarchal sort of, we know best, we don't want to hear from you. This is what we're up against right now, and this is the mindset we need to break out of. So to sum up on approach, we need the UK to put a lot more emphasis on diplomacy. We need to put their money where their mouth is. We need them to change their mouth first. Then we need to put them to put their money where their mouth is. And we need them to reinstate the very minimum 0.7% commitment to overseas aid. We need to put human rights at the front and centre of our arms export policies. On education, we need to get rid of the empire nostalgia from the curriculum. We get the arms industry and the MOD out of our education system. And on our security strategies, we kind of need to wake up and start really caring about this stuff, because this acceptance and this sort of public exclusion from our national security strategies is not working for us. Those are the strategies from which the militarisms stem. And that's the imprint of the education system and the ruling class on our foreign policy. That's the battleground where we need to focus. So we need to take a sort of whole of society approach and get involved with our national security strategy, and insist that the UK starts to roll back on this militaristic approach. Thank you very much.